All right. So rewind all that and pretend I didn't just say all that, and I'll start over again. Just kidding. So the point today is really to create awareness about being a mentor, what it's like, what you can do in that position, and also create intention around it. So really, pushing it out, driving it, doing it with that intention rather than just accidentally or incidentally. And that's our intent today. I'm Doug. I think I know most of you or have met you all. I'm former Anderson, former Price. I've run a construction company. I was a partner at ECAS&H for about a decade. And about 5 years and 10 days ago, I decided to leave public accounting and serve it from a different perspective, and that is through the eyes of the coach. And so now I spend most of my days coaching folks in public accounting or CFOs or number cruncher types and supporting them in performance and career. And that's me. So that's my background. And Brooke, maybe share a little bit about you.
Yep, I'm Brooke Delgado. I am a member of the Accounting Advisory Council at CU Denver, and I currently am the Director of Finance at First IQ. We are a tech company in the healthcare industry. And this is my second year being a mentor in this program. Suzanne?
You're on mute, Suzanne.
I'm also on the advisory council. This is my third year on the advisory council, but the second year as a mentor. Last year I very much enjoyed being a mentor last year. It was a great experience. My background is I've been a consultant since 2014. Before that, I was a CFO. And I've very much enjoyed the consulting space because it allows me to be in different situations and help companies. Basically, my job is done when the problem is solved, and I've enjoyed that very much.
Nice.
That's a little bit of my background.
Thank you. Angela, how about you?
Let's see, I started my career at Deloitte in the assurance side, went over to Arthur Anderson in the consulting side, CFO for Gary Magnus, did the controller CFO stuff for 6 years. And for the last 10 years, I've been an entrepreneur. I run a staffing, recruiting, consulting firm. So very involved with mentoring and at the Colorado Society of CPAs. That's my background.
Thank you. Jump in. We'll start picking on you.
I'm Taylor, Taylor Murphy. I am a CU Denver graduate. I got both my bachelor's in accounting and my master's in tax at CU Denver. Was a member of Beta Alpha Psi, so I know Carolyn and the team down there very well. I am now a tax staff at Plant Moran. I am going on my 3rd year with them. Yeah, that's about it.
Welcome, Taylor.
I can go. I'm Zach Dorshow. Been on the Accounting Advisory Council for 2 years, and this will be my 2nd year in the mentorship program. I'm a manager in the assurance practice at EY, and I did my undergrad and master's in accounting at UCD, so know the student population well.
Love the alumni. Tommy, I think you're up.
Yep, I can go next. Yeah, so Tommy Merlier. I am a CU Boulder alum, so not a Lynx, but a Buff. I am excited to be part of the mentor program again this year. I have some recent news. I originally started my career at ECAS&H and continued that on with Plant Moran. But as of yesterday, 6 years later, I am no longer a staff there. So big news for me. I'm actually going to be at BDO as a campus manager going forward. So It's definitely still in the accounting realm and excited to be part of the program. So thanks again for having me.
Congrats, Tommy.
Thank you.
Carolyn, you have to go too.
Happily. I am also a CU Denver alumni. I got my master's and then went right into teaching. So I've been teaching for 6 years at CU Denver, and teach everything from principles up to auditing and advanced accounting. And so this initiative of mentorship came up. It's been coming up since Doug has been on the board, I think, or the council, but we officially launched it last year. I think maybe all of you were mentors. I think our new mentors aren't here. But last year was a little bit of a kind of just bring it together and make it work. And then this year we're trying to make it more formal. So thank you all for attending. I have a little here, so I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to log off in a little while to get ready for school. But yeah, we're so glad you're here. We're hoping this year is just a little bit more formal and you have a little bit more help getting kicked off. And like I said, I think you all were on, but I'm going to send you emails today matching you with your mentee. And yeah, we'll go from there. So thanks so much.
Thank you. And I do want to applaud Carolyn. I was a part of the initial CU Boulder mentor class many years ago and was able to see that program grow into what it is today. And it's huge, a huge effort on the Boulder front. And just to know that we're in our second year of this just really excites me, gets me super jazzed. So proud of Carolyn for what she's done here. And I'm proud of all of you for being here and for the efforts that you've already given, plus what you're going to do going forward. I guarantee you this is going to have an impact bigger than we can imagine down the road. So thank you all for being here. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump in, Brooke, unless there's anything else you want to add.
No, go for it.
All right. So slide time. I need to get rid of this. So I want you just for a second, just in your own thought, imagine your favorite mentor. And throughout your career, I'm sure there's been someone, some influence that was in a part of your career that gave you some guidance, that gave you some support. I just want you to think about the value that they've created in your life. I'll share a quick story. Mine's name is Brad McQueen, and I thought Brad was a real son of a bitch at first because he was really smart, very driven, and I ran into him when I was first year staff at Arthur Andersen. And he was the guy that if he saw me not paying attention in one of his trainings, he would call me out and he'd say, "Hey, Doug, why do we test catch?" And I'd say, "Well, it's because we have to. It's part of the audit program." And he'd say, "No, but why are we doing it?" And he would just hound me on this stuff. And later on, further down the road, he was the guy that helped me make some of my most important career decisions. This guy was, not in my wedding, but he was at my wedding. This guy I had lunch with 4 weeks ago. I've known him for 25 years, and he still is a part of my life. Now, at times we kind of switch now, where I become a mentor in some things, and he's still my mentor in others. But this guy's been in my life for 25 years, and that's the power of a mentor. So I want you to kind of hold that perspective and some of your own experiences with a mentor, and start with a really simple question. What is a mentor? And to give the lay of the land, I want to identify some of the structures that are out there to support folks, professionals. There's a sponsor, and that's someone who's really guiding someone through a corporation, getting them to the next level, really supports them directly. There's a career advisor who's there to go through their performance plan, and here's where you expect to be in 2 years, and here's the things you need to do to get there. There's a therapist, which are a very busy group of professionals these days, and they really are focused on the past and healing. There's a coach, there's me, and I'm a very non-directive form of support, meaning that I ask a bunch of really tough questions and don't give a lot of advice, but really support people with their own abilities. And then there's a mentor who is a much more directive form of support that is focused on passing down the experiences that they've had, sharing their knowledge with the mentee. And obviously that's the one we're focused on today. Luckily enough, the AICPA actually has kind of its own definition of a mentor. And and or at least some friendly words around it. And I'll read verbatim here. Mentoring is a powerful force for developing the next generation of leaders. Mentor can offer insight and advice about challenges and opportunities, serve as a sounding board for ideas and career decisions. Outside mentor will bring an objective perspective, which often complements the mentoring and coaching a professional receives inside an organization. I like that word complements, in the sense that there are other forms of support here for these students that we're going to be working with. There's structure within the university to support them. There's Beta Alpha Psi. There's the Carolins. There's folks that are there to hold these students as they go through. And then here we are as a complement, somewhat independent, outside of the university. Our intentions are clearly just to support this individual. I'd like to circle back on kind of my observation and my sharing of my own mentor, and maybe one of you have a mentoring experience you'd like to share.
I'll share one. I've been a mentor to an at-risk youth for 10 years now. We were matched when she was 12 and she's 22. And while we're no longer with the original program, we're still in each other's lives. And she lives out of state now and we still keep in touch. But what I've realized being a mentor is that I got so much out of that relationship that was unexpected from the mentor side. And I got to learn a lot about her. Because of the dynamics of her household, it took about 4 years before she really started to trust me. And I didn't think I was making an impact or doing anything for a really long time. And it wasn't until probably 7 or 8 years down the road that she opened up and told me what it was like for her to have a mentor in her life and how meaningful that it was and the changes that it made in her life. So I think 2 things out of that. One is the mentor also gets something out of this relationship. And 2, just because it looks like you're not doing anything, know that in the background you really are.
Thanks, Brooke. Anyone else got a good one? All right, we'll keep trucking. So, the purpose of this definition, again, is really just to create an awareness of our role. We are there as an experienced, as a trusted advisor. We're there to advise, to train, to support these students with our experiences and knowledge. Now, mentoring skills. I doubt you guys have ever taken a class on the type of skills to use for mentoring, but I'm just going to sprinkle some out there for you. And none of this is right or wrong. It's just my opinion. So I get to say whatever I want to say here. So the mentoring skills to me, one of the most important ones is active listening. Now, there's a difference between listening, and there's a difference between hearing. And what I'm really talking about is hearing. When we say active listening, it's actually an exercise. It's actually a behavior. Like we're all listening right now, but I guarantee you right now you're in your heads to some degree. You're thinking, okay, what do I have to do today? Or how much longer do I have to do this? Or yeah, Doug, we know all about active listening. You're in your head, and that's okay. Now that's kind of what I call level 1 listening. Level 2 listening is when you turn this voice in your head off and you really get curious about the words that you're hearing. You actually are really focused on the listening. You're not trying to solve a problem yet. You're not trying to make a conclusion. You're not telling a story. You're listening. And then level 3, this global piece is looking at hands, looking at tone or listening to tone, looking at my facial expressions. Am I happy? Am I sad? Am I in between? Am I too excited? Am I defensive? Like it's that global listening. So when you're working with your mentees, this listening is powerful because you can tell things when you're listening that you couldn't do when you're trying to solve the problem. And you might try to solve the problem too soon and not actually get to the root of where your advice could help them. So the first and maybe most important is the listening. The second one is powerful questions. I'll teach you a trick here. Use the word what at the beginning of your questions. Now, why do I say that? Because it's hard to answer a what question with a yes or a no. You know, if I asked you, is this something you like to do? That's a yes or no. Yeah, I do. If I ask you, what do you like to do? Well, then I have to come up with things. I have to actually think. I have to respond to the question. I can't just dodge it with a yes or a no or a don't know. That what is a powerful tool when you ask questions because it makes the person think about their answer. They can't get out of it so easily with a yes or a no. And watch out for the why questions. Why questions tend to put people in a defensive position. Why did you wear that today? Why did you take that class? Why did you get that grade? Why didn't you do that? You can kind of feel that it's like, well, I don't know, because I didn't want to. You know, you kind of feel judged a little bit with that why. So a little tip here is use those what questions to drive the thinking and the thought that it's required. Next up, building trust. So a key component, I mean, the reason why I had a mentor, still do for 25 years, is big deal is trust, big part of that. And I stole the 4 cores of credibility from Covey. And there's a book out there called The Speed of Trust, which is a long read. You don't probably have to read all the pages, but there's some good points in it. And one of the points I really enjoyed is the 4 cores of credibility, how you create kind of a trusting relationship with someone. And there's 4 pieces: intent, integrity, capabilities, and results. Let me walk back through them. Intent. What is my intent in this relationship? Am I being a mentor as a resume builder? Am I being a mentor because I really care about the university? Am I being a mentor because I really care about humans? Am I being a mentor because I really want to practice this skill? Understanding your intent and even sharing it with your mentee. You know, my intent of being in this role for you is whatever it might be. It really creates some trust with that. Integrity, you know, holding your end of the bargain, showing up and speaking with integrity, talking about experiences with integrity, holding that space of integrity with your mentees builds that trust. Capabilities, you know, allowing them, you know, one of the things that I've done as a coach is I've held on to my CPA. I haven't signed an audit report in 5 years, but I've held my CPA for this long. Why? Because it builds credibility with my clients. Like they really, if I'm working with a partner in Nashville and that's their coach, the fact that I still hold my CPA allows me to come in with some credibility about my capabilities, not only to coach them, but also to understand the experiences they've had in their professional career. So share your capabilities. Let your mentees understand what you're capable of doing and share those experiences. Results is a great way to, again, build some trust. You know, talking about your own experiences with mentoring and how they have influenced your own results in your career. Like me talking about Brad, you know, I would not be here today without Brad's influence to some degree, good and bad. But I wouldn't be here in this position today without him. So share those, build that trust. I'll pause there. Any thoughts, questions? Am I going too fast, too slow? Where am I at?
No, I think that's the key, right? The trust and building that trust with somebody. So I mentor different types of people, like what Brooke does. I mentor single moms getting out of poverty, and then I do the Gold Award girls for Girl Scouts. And really, the biggest thing is that trust. It's in the listening. And that's really what they need, is somebody to hear what they're saying, because often they don't feel like they're heard, depending on what they're doing. If they're trying to accomplish a goal, a lot of it is that storytelling and getting them connected with somebody that can help them, even if it's not you, right? But using third-party story, you know, listening builds that trust. That's what I think. The trust is really the key, because then they want to hear more.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Angela. All right, I'll keep trucking. Next one, storytelling. When you're a mentor, you know, one of the powerful tools you have is to be able to share your own experiences with your mentees for their own learning, you know, and telling about the time when you experienced something, the time you had to pick a firm to work at or make a career decision, the time you didn't do so well in the class. And I've got lots of stories about that. I may have the record for the lowest GPA ever held by a partner in public accounting. 0.76 is what I actually had at the University of Colorado Boulder. So I haven't put a stake in that yet, but I probably do have that lowest. But but talking about the times that you've even thought about changing careers and how you've experienced accounting. It's powerful for them to hear real stories. It really helps them understand that it's okay to be where they're at. You don't have to normalize it to the nth degree, but just allow them to see those experiences and share those stories. Basic one, but relationship management. Just like you do with your clients, just like you do internally with your internal clients, you know, being good about scheduling these conversations, being good about holding your end to the bargain. If you say you're going to do something, do that something. You know, treat this like a real relationship, and put the right amount of effort and focus on building a strong relationship with this individual. And finally, direct communication. You know, it's in a mentor-mentee relationship, it's good for you to be direct. It helps build that trust to know that they have someone who's going to shoot straight, someone who's going to really let them know what it's about and how hard it might be. It doesn't sugarcoat everything. Allows them space to understand that you're going to be honest with them. You're going to be authentic with them. You're going to be real for them. It might be, you know, a breath of fresh air for them to have that. So feel free to use that skill. So those are the skills. And again, going back to those two things, awareness and intention, this awareness here is really around these skills you can bring forward into that mentoring relationship. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Brooke, who's going to take over.
All right, thank you, Doug. I'm going to talk more about the meeting structure and time commitments, best practices, that type of thing for the actual relationship itself. And when we talk about time commitment, we suggest 1 monthly virtual meeting per month, and that meeting can range anywhere from 40 to 60 minutes. If the match feels comfortable meeting in person, you certainly can do that. You have the option. Ultimately, you guys determine the frequency and the duration that feels comfortable for you guys. A tip, and this is something I did with my mentee last year, is to set up a reoccurring meeting for the entire school term. So for example, we selected the second Thursday of every month. When his second semester courses came out, we had to change the time because it conflicted with the class. But other than that, we had a consistent meeting on the calendar every month, and you can always change that to accommodate any scheduling conflicts. I wanted to ask, since everybody here is a returning mentor, what were your time commitments last year and how did that work for you guys? Did you do once a month? How long were your meetings?
I can go. I think we met at the beginning once a month, and then it trailed off to maybe once every 2 months. Usually about 60 minutes per meeting. Just trying to understand, you know, answer their questions for what they had, and then if there was some new area that I wanted to talk through with them, then it could go a little bit longer. Sometimes we went an hour and a half, or I think there was a couple that were even 2 hours, just if we, you know, had good momentum, didn't want to stop.
Great, thanks, Doug. Anyone else?
Yeah, I met with my mentee once a month, and it was generally about 45 minutes to an hour. Sometimes it was a little more frequent if she had something that she was particularly going through and she needed a little more guidance on. So I like what you're saying, to that we own the calendar. I definitely did not own the calendar, but we did meet monthly, so it worked out that way. But yeah, I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, and I've got a suggestion later on in the slideshow about following up and just confirming the time. And when the mentor owns the calendar, it kind of puts that in the mentor's responsibility to say, hey, are you still good with this time and date? What we have next is just a sample agenda for your very first initial meeting. And we've got two versions of this. So the first sample agenda is to start your meeting off with simple introductions. So the mentor can talk about their education, their career history, hobbies, mentor experience. The mentee can share activities, interest, work experience, and why they chose their majors. If you feel comfortable, you can certainly share some more personal information like where you live, your family dynamics, and pets, but that's completely up to you guys and where your comfort level is. Next, you want to establish a purpose and a plan for the mentoring relationship. And one thing I did at the beginning of our meeting is I said, okay, what are the 3 things that you want to get out of this mentoring program? And we use those things as topics for future meetings. So just some topic suggestions are, you could talk about job searching, career paths, internships, resumes and cover letters, presentations, public speaking, and network. So if the mentee's having trouble coming up with some topics or some things that they want to get out of their mentor relationship, you can kind of ask them, well, do you have interest in hearing about various career paths, or do you want to learn more about networking? And this will lead you on to your next meetings. After that, you're going to talk about your schedule. Determine the frequency that you want to meet and go ahead and schedule your meetings. Set up that calendar invite, determine the time. And then you can close that very first meeting with a Q&A. Just continue to get to know each other. You can ask about the classes that they're taking, any group projects that they have. You can also tell the mentee about your current job and any projects or goals that you're working on as well. So that's just an idea of what you can do for your very first meeting. Alternatively, we've got some other meeting structures that you can do. So your first meeting could be your simple get to know you session. Just get to know each other that very first meeting. The second meeting, you can start talking about your goals, what you want to get out of the relationship, some topics that you can start developing. And then the third meeting, start on those specific topics. And then all your future meetings will also be focused on those goals or topics that you selected in your first couple of meetings. And those are just some ideas on meetings. Are there any questions about meetings, or would you guys like to share any experiences you had last year? Yeah, Doug.
So I want to pick Angela's brain. Is there anything that you would, given, and I totally agree with you on trust, but with that in mind, is there anything that you would sprinkle in here just to kind of help build that trust in these first couple meetings?
Well, I was trying to think about this, right? Because when, I've got these millennial kids, right? And they're all, I've been through all of them. And my youngest right now just went and visited all of them up at school. And it's funny because, they're going to say different things to me, right? Than they're going to say to a mentor. And I think that mentor is so important, right? I was thinking, I need to see if Mesa has a program, because I know that my son, I get a text the other night, hey, I got a 95 on my managerial accounting test. And he's so excited. That's what he's going to tell me. He's not going to tell me where he's not doing well, specifically, I think. And so I think it's more, I think there's also this component of when you build the trust, it like what you just said, Doug, telling them stories where you weren't always CPA. We weren't always. I wasn't sure, during the program, I was, co-president of the Beta Alpha Psi there at CU Denver too. And I thought, wow, is this for me? I thought I really liked law too. Maybe I should go into law. So, giving them those stories of where you weren't sure either, because I think these kids have so many opportunities and there's so many choices from, changing over, and we're losing these accounting students so quickly into finance and data analytics. And so maybe sharing really where I wasn't sure, but there's so many opportunities. And using your friends as examples. I think that's what I would do is show them also where we weren't always, driving, BMWs and getting partners, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's the other side of it, is sharing them, trying to get down to their level.
Yeah, make it real.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so I like to call this the silent treatment. This comes up every now and again, where you guys are just staring at each other on the screen and no one's talking, or maybe the mentee isn't that engaged. And we've come up with some things, just some talking points for you guys to make sure that you keep the conversation going. Simply just update each other on what's been going on since the last meeting. That's an easy one to just start every meeting off with. Another one is, if you are working on a project at work, especially if it's a long-term project, bring the mentee along for that experience. Let them know every meeting, you can kind of update them. Here's where you are on the project. Here are some of the setbacks you've had. Here are some of the accomplishments you've gained during the project. And then going back to what Angela was saying, tell stories and lessons you've learned throughout your career and your education. The mentees are going to learn from our experiences, and hearing that will make us more relatable to them, but also start building that trust like Doug and Angela were talking about. You also want to ask, go ahead, Doug.
I was just going to jump in, like Tommy, what you described in your journey and the transition you're making right now, that's a wonderful story to share, and just to show the nuances of a career in accounting and how it can change, and you know, it looks different for everybody, but there's a lot of possibilities with it. I think just keep that in mind. It's a wonderful story to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's so many different directions too. Like, I mean, from originally starting as an accountant, then going into HR, like then, you know, now transitioning from EKS&H to Plan Moran. I mean, obviously there's so many different learning lessons, but I think, you know, your story can be so related, like maybe not relatable to them in the moment, but it'll kind of teach them to be ready to be flexible, and that change could happen at any minute. So I think I definitely agree with everything that you guys have been saying. And I think it's definitely important to being able to share your own story. There's going to be eventually something that clicks with them or connects with them.
Thanks.
Next, you can start to get to know where their academic interests are. So you can ask the mentee about their favorite classes, what they like. And then moving on, I really want to put it on the mentors to keep the conversation going. So if you run out of things to talk about, it really is our responsibility to keep that conversation going, keep the mentee engaged. That way they don't feel like there's too much pressure on them to have to come up with things to talk about. They are definitely going to be driving the meeting, but just try to keep something in your back pocket to keep the conversation going. Going back to what Doug was saying about the powerful questions, you can always ask the mentee their opinion on something. Simple question, what do you think about that? There's always current events that can be talked about. That's kind of always in my back pocket. That's my fallback. If there's nothing to talk about, I'll bring up something that's happening in the news. So there's stock market, new accounting rules that come out, interesting court cases. The labor market and jobs report comes out every month. And then there's also quarterly earnings reports that come out from companies. And there's always something in the news going on that you can talk about if you run out of things to talk about.
I have a question, since all of you have been, because I haven't mentored at UCD, believe it or not, I've been on this accountability committee for, I don't know, 14 years, whenever it was started. And I've never mentored anybody there. Are you finding that you're getting non-traditional students there? And they're, you know, that seems they're a little bit older maybe, and you're not having as much of the silent issues as you would maybe with a 19, 20-year-old?
So I had a student who is an accounting major, but he leans more towards finance, definitely younger. He had switched a lot of colleges, and this is his third college that he's been to. And I think this is where he'll ride out the rest of his academic career. But what I noticed about him is that he was kind of at the age where he's ready to get the ball rolling. He wasn't, it wasn't his, it wasn't his first set of classes, wasn't his first major. He was really interested in kind of, okay, let's finish up this schooling so that I can get started with my career. That's my experience. I believe who we targeted were the intermediate accounting students. Is that right, Doug? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, intermediate accounting. So it's not necessarily their first year at the university, but maybe they're, I would say, kind of junior, senior level. So there weren't too many times where I personally had the silent treatment. I just know from my mentoring experience that does happen.
Well, are most of them working as they're going to school, or are they just dedicated to education?
I think most of them are to some degree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
My student, he was a little bit probably older than I am, but I'm 26, so that's not difficult. And he was working full time at the post office. So Definitely, a slower school track. He wasn't taking like a full 4 or 5 set of class loads every semester. So we worked around his work schedule and school schedule.
Angela,
Yeah,
it's
and-
interesting how diverse the student population is just listening to this too, because my mentee was first generation, had had a career before he came to the US. So I think he was in his mid to late 20s. And we never had the silent treatment issue. It's interesting because discussing this, I see it a lot, when I'm mentoring new staff at EY and things like that, where they come in and they're overwhelmed, and often you have to kind of push through the silence. But yeah, never had it when we were doing the UCD mentoring.
Okay.
So
I
hopefully
just
this
curious.
isn't something you have to troubleshoot too often, but it does happen. There are times where sometimes the topic just wasn't going anywhere, and we needed to switch gears. And I was able to bring up, either share a story from my career or say, hey, what else do you want to talk about? Because we've kind of done everything we need to about this topic.
Yeah. Okay. I was just curious. I'm never one to lose words, but I just curious.
I was
if
going
you're
to say,
having that
I
with-
don't think your mentee is going to have any issues being quiet around you, Angela.
I know. I'm just curious as to what you're finding, in terms of the students. And then my other question I was going to ask is, so that's why I said, are they working? Because I keep thinking it's so important to get them internships. And I'm always like every year I send out these massive emails to all of my clients, like, you better start getting internships ready, get these kids out there, because it makes such a huge difference when they can get engaged in the profession. Then they really feel like they're going somewhere, and they're better at they go back to school so much more engaged in their education, their courses, because now they have a footprint. Like, oh, even if they're just in an office twice a week, right? I tell them internship doesn't have to be paid all the time. It doesn't have to be full time, but it could be go shadow somebody, for 1 day a week, at least, something to get them into the profession where they see what we do and the diversity of what we do. I think we're not just sitting there cranking out bank racks, I think.
Yeah.
I think
Agreed.
you bring up a good point. You may have a mentee who's really not aware of Meet the Firms or of Beta Alpha Psi, or the importance of talking about internships or when to start internships. I think the school does a really good job of trying to inform, but it is a two-way street. And I found with my mentee last year that there was a lot of education around how that process looks, when they should be getting an internship, when they should be talking about these things, what meetings they should go to. And so there's absolutely some education and awareness to create for them around a path.
Okay, great. That's what I was, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So now let's move on to some best practices. And this is just best practices for the relationship in general. So I had mentioned earlier, the mentor is going to own the calendar invite, and the mentor can follow up a day or two before the meeting and say, hey, just want to confirm that this date and time works. Just want to confirm this topic that we're talking about. And that kind of lets you guys both come to the meeting a little bit more prepared. Always come prepared with a backup topic like current events. Go with the flow. So I had mentioned earlier that there were some times where we finished talking about a topic and we still had quite a bit of time left. And so we switched gears, and a lot of the times the mentee is driving the meeting. So just go with the flow if they start changing the topic or they steer the conversation in a different direction. Write down follow-ups for the next meeting. This is something that I did, and it just reminded me, like, oh, they had a test a week after our last meeting. Follow up and make sure you ask them how that test went, or how did that group project go, or how did your new class go, something like that. So just to remind yourself, that way you're not having to remember a month later. And then set expectations for the next meeting. You could ask the mentee what they want to talk about for the next meeting. If it's going to be resumes, you can ask that they have the resume updated before the next meeting. And then just ask them to write down any questions or ideas that come up throughout the month in between meetings, so that they come prepared with some sort of questions or something to talk about.
Just
A
one
few other,
quick thing, Brooke.
yeah.
So on the, writing down follow-ups, and I do this with my coaching clients as well as my mentee, but I'll open a blank email while I'm on a virtual call and I'll put it over onto the side, and I'll keep my my focus on my camera here. But as we're talking, I will be typing notes of things. It's one of the ways I listen is by writing, and I'll just keep notes of things that are said during that conversation. Either I'm going to meet with my counselor, I'm going to go to a Beta Alpha Psi meeting, I'm going to go to meet, whatever it is. I keep track of it. And then at the end of it, I'll just send that email to myself. I'll file it away in my mentor folder in Outlook. And then prior to that next meeting, I'll open that email up, I'll read through it, I'll get acclimated to the conversation we had previously. And that way I'm entering into that conversation ready to go.
That's a great system, Doug. Thank you for sharing that. And just a few other best practices that we have are to ask the mentee if there's anything you can support them with. And support can look like letting them practice a presentation to you before they actually present it in front of class. If all the meetings are virtual, consider holding your last meeting in person if you guys feel comfortable doing that. And then I wanted to end with a couple of quotes from an article in the Journal of Accountancy, the September issue. They had talked about the impact of mentoring, and a couple of quotes that stuck out to me. The first one is, a mentor-mentee relationship should be based on trust, effective communication, and the commitment to the relationship. I want to add to that some feedback that we got last year from our mentees is that they wanted to get to know the mentor on a more personal level. In general, just kind of becoming friends, and just to let you know that it's okay if you want to become friends with your mentee if the relationship develops in that way. And then the last quote is, a mentor should help a mentee understand themselves, deconstruct feedback, and help develop the mentee's accountability. I just thought those were two great, just kind of a whole, I guess what am I trying to say? It combines what mentoring and the relationship is all in one. It sums it up. That's what I'm trying to say. It sums up mentoring very nicely, and I wanted to share those with you. I think next we're going to move on to an activity. So Doug, I'll have you take over.
Well, we're coming down on our time here, and I had a fun activity which you all would have hated. So we may skip that. But I want to focus on accountability just for a second. I'll teach you another trick about accountability. It's my 3 favorite accountability questions. Okay, it's you're talking to someone, you've created I'm going to go to Beta Alpha Psi. They talk about how they're going to learn from it, meet people, and you get to the end of the meeting and you reflect on what it is they said they were going to do. And the first question that you can ask them is, what will you do? Pretty simple, right? They'll say, I'm going to go to Beta Alpha Psi. Great. When will you do it? It's the second question. They'll say, I'm going to go to the November meeting. Great. And then the third question, which really kind of hits it home, is, how will I know you did it? And they'll say something like, well, I can tell you at our next meeting. And you'll say, oh, that's great. Or what if you sent me an email that next morning and let me know how the meeting went? Would you do that for me? And that way you've brought a full circle hug around accountability. You've gotten them to say what they're going to do. You've gotten them to say when they're going to do it. And you've kind of created this little crutch of proof of evidence that I did it, that you're going to be a part of. And this doesn't just work at a mentor-mentee. It works in your own businesses. It works with clients. It doesn't work at home. Don't try that at home. That's a little
Doug,
something.
I agree to maybe skip over the activity that we wouldn't enjoy. And maybe if we could just all share some best practices or any tips that you guys have, anything you want to share with the group that could help us all in our mentor-mentee relationships.
Or any other tips or tricks or things that you found successful in mentoring, just advice.
Yeah, Doug, I thought that was great advice. Just having the email up and typing while you're in the meeting itself with those follow-up items. I haven't done that personally, I usually write it afterwards, and I'm always like, oh, what was that one thing that we talked about that I really wanted to touch on in our follow-up discussions?
Yep.
Just taking notes during it, I think would be hugely beneficial.
I'll throw out some advice from my own perspective, and I think everyone, please throw your advice. Be patient. You know that these are students, and they are overwhelmed with just holding the calendars and schedules that they have, and they can be an elusive bunch. So be patient. If they miss a meeting, it's okay. Just reach out and say, hey, figure you're busy. Let's find the time next week and let's sit down and talk or create some conversation. They miss it again. Bring up that patience. Hey, let's figure this out. Like, when's the best time to meet? And when they're not showing up and doing the things that you asked them to do, patience again. Well, tell me about that. What was hard about doing that? What can we do differently so that is something that you can say you did next time we speak? So exercise patience.
I guess one of the things that I would
Go
throw
ahead,
out that
Michelle.
I think is really valuable is that I think what the kids don't understand is this, because these students have been kind of isolated with this online learning, and then they haven't really gotten to do a lot of the in-person stuff, is helping them understand that anybody that they meet right now is going to be part of their network moving forward, right? Because I'm a huge fan of, I still know a lot of the people that I graduated at UC Denver with, right? And that we helped each other with their careers the whole way through. And we've all gone different directions, but helping them understand that, even I'd like to be able to say, hey, I want you to link in with Doug Slaba. I want you to link in with Brooke Delgado, right? I want you to go out and write your LinkedIn and start getting yourself networked with people so they understand, and getting familiar with doing that so that they don't feel uncomfortable when it comes time to really do it for a career perspective, right? And maybe that one of the things when I go speak at the schools is I always ask them, to look around. These people around you, these are going to be your peers for the rest of your career, right? Get to know each other. Stop on the way out of class, because we used to have study groups. I don't even think my son said they weren't even able to study together last year because of COVID, right? They had to try to get something online. They didn't get that accomplished. They now have the tutoring center open that they can go to, but you got to schedule it. It's still a little strict, but helping them find a network to be more comfortable around in the accounting community if they're not going to be at Alpha Psi, because it doesn't always fall on where they are. So I'm just letting you know that I'm going to tell my little mentor they should, link in with you guys. Let's start teaching them how to network online, teaching them how to network in person, and asking people to, hey, do you have time for a coffee? If they bring up something in class, so that they start doing it, because I just don't think they're as good at it, because these kids have been online, on screen most of their career. Anybody 28 and under, really.
Yeah, and I'll just add a little bit something to that. As a recruiter, I've always been fortunate enough to be able to connect my mentees with others. I feel like the networking piece is definitely a huge aspect of it, but not always feeling like you have to be the one to come with all the answers. So fortunately for me, I've been able to connect them to other practice staff and just let them kind of talk through their day-to-day and help the students kind of navigate the start of their career. So I've been fortunate enough as the recruiter to be able to connect people, and obviously been surrounded by great people that are willing to do it. So I think that's been helpful outside of my relationship with my mentees.
Thanks, Tommy. What other advice or tips would anyone like to share?
Something that I worked on with my mentee last session was really breaking things down into bite-sized pieces. They're busy, they're going to school, they're working, and finding a job or an internship can seem really daunting. So breaking things down into pieces and like one step at a time, I think really helped him feel accomplished, which kept him coming back and getting more. So instead of saying, go out and decide which firms you want to apply for, it was, okay, go out, do some research and come back with a list of, 5 firms that you think you might enjoy. And then we talked about those, and it was like, okay, well, let's go look at when their applications are due and what their application process looks like. So I think really breaking things down so they're less daunting helps in the whole process as well.
Good. I kind of look at it like, you guys ever watched in curling? When those guys slide the thing down the ice, and then there's those guys with the brooms that go nuts and create a pathway for the, I don't even know what the hell you call that thing, to slide into the spot. We're kind of like those folks with the brooms, right? As a mentor, like you have the ability to clear that path for them to help them get to where they're trying to go. Like as soon as you talk to your mentee, as soon as you have one conversation, you've made a little nudge that changes their trajectory. They may end up somewhere else. They may have a better opportunity to get a job. They might be able to participate more, to network more. Like, we're giving little nudges in these people's lives that are really going to have a big impact in the long run. And it's an honor to be a mentor. And each of you have had experiences in your life and have earned this position. And it's an amazing position to be in. It's powerful. It's a wonderful thing to do. And unless there's any other advice or tips, I think we would just wrap up.
I think the only other one is just don't overtalk them, right? Because I think sometimes, if you even remember back, and I just even remember thinking, I knew CPA was a certified public accountant, and I love doing, I was doing the books of somebody, bookkeeping, APAR when I first started, but I didn't understand like the difference between the firms and big firms, and then what do those firms do? Like, I think that we got to really bring it down to ground level. I was trying to educate my son on the differences, and he still is like, kind of understand, but he doesn't understand what a full audit report is. He's just like, what? It's this the basics of where they could go with their career, because I think I can easily overtalk. I think because he's been around me so often that he knows what I'm talking about, but he really didn't, right? So I had to sit down and say, there's this kind of an accountant, there's tax, there's audit, taking him down the road of the different things that accountants do versus just me saying, oh, there's the big four, and then there's this tier two, and so I think that's the other thing too, is maybe I forgot that my husband was saying to me, you probably need to break this down a little bit nicer, because I don't think he's getting what you're saying.
Good. Love that. It's a great idea. And then I think idea is the wrong word, but it's just good to understand their perspective. They're green, they're inexperienced. They don't, the words you're saying sometimes can be confusing. And I love what you said, Angela, slow down.
Yeah.
Listen, talk. Okay. Anything else? All right, Brooke, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah. So our contact information is here on the slide. Carolyn is also another resource. If you guys have any questions along the way throughout the term, feel free to reach out to any of us anytime. Doug and I are going to be following up with everybody probably 2 or 3 months into the program, just to see how things are going, see if there's anything we can help with. And then we wanted to just offer a resource. There's a podcast that I listen to. It's called Quick and Dirty Tips Modern Mentor. Quick and Dirty Tips has several podcasts out there, and Modern Mentor is kind of a short one. They're anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, and it's all career mentoring advice. So you might get a little nugget out of that podcast if you're looking for some more resources on mentoring. And if anybody else has any other resources that they want to share, please let us know. And then a copy of the recording of this training and the slides are going to be sent to you guys. So you'll have all of this information as well.
We're done. We just finished our first mentor training.
Thank you. Thank you for the participation. This was a great conversation. I know I got something out of this.
So if I'm thinking about this right, Brooke, Carolyn will send an introduction, or at least a sign. That'll be the next step, and then we're off and running.
Yep. So Carolyn today is going to send out the matching list so that everybody will know who their mentor mentees are, and the mentors will take it from there.
Awesome. All right, folks. Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful Thursday. Enjoy a little bit cooler weather and hopefully some sunshine, and happy mentoring.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.